Star Pittman, and welcome to this episode of Women of Purpose podcast. And I'm really excited about this episode because this is the first episode that we actually have a man joining us on the podcast. And we're really excited about having Jake and Sierra Bradway with us. And we're gonna be talking about relationships today. So thank you for tuning in. So we're just going to get started. So welcome, you guys, Sierra and Jake. It's a privilege to have you guys on the podcast. And this has been on my heart to do for a long time. And I was like praying about like what couple we could actually have on here that would inspire women and inspire men that are in relationships that maybe they're screaming for help. And you guys were the first ones that popped in my head. So again, thank you for joining us. So we're gonna start, I think, by just having you guys share a little bit about just your background, like where you, how you grew up. I think that is key to the relationship. So we'll start with Jake. Do you mind starting out?
Yeah,
Our
definitely.
first man on the man of purpose. Yeah.
I'm so proud of this. Just so you know, thanks
You're
for asking.
You're the perfect man to be on this podcast.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
If I ever have a Wikipedia page, I just wanted to say first man on the Woman of Purpose podcast.
There you go. There you go. We'll make sure we add that.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for having us. And yeah, so I grew up right here in Rice Lake, and I came from kind of a different situation, a unique situation. So I was born out of an affair. My dad was married to a woman and had a family with her, and he had an affair on his wife with my mom, and then I was birthed out of that affair. So my dad decided to not be a part of my life. He wanted to work things out with his family and everything, so it was just me and my mom and my two siblings. And we grew up right here in Rice Lake, having a single mom with 3 kids. We didn't have a lot of money, so we grew up in just low-income housing here in town. And I just remember growing up, I just remember it being very stressful. Just a really stressful, high-stress environment. My mom, she was always working multiple jobs just to try to make ends meet, so we just had a lot of babysitters and not a lot of quality family time. And my mom was just tired and exhausted when she got home, and still had to, make dinner for us and do the dishes and the laundry and all that stuff. So it was just a really, really high stress environment is what I remember the most. And, growing up in low income housing, we were surrounded by a lot of abuse, even within our home and just around us. There was abuse of all different kinds going on all around us. So that's what my home life was like, but we always grew up in the church. And my mom always made sure that that was a big priority for us. So she was very strict about it. We did all the church stuff. That was like really the only stability that we had in our life was church. Yeah. And it was such a big rule that like if we spent the night at a friend's house on a Saturday night, we had to make sure we were home Sunday morning so we could make it to church. And if we didn't get our butts home to get to church, then we were grounded that week until the following Sunday when we could make things right, and come to church. So
that's funny.
Yeah, and I'm very grateful that I grew up that way, in hindsight, because, the Bible says to raise up a child in the way they should go, and even when they're older, they will not stray from it. And I can attest the truth of that scripture because I did everything that I could once I got older to try to break away from God and to break away from the church and everything. And no matter what I did, there was like this force pulling me back to Him. And growing up, I was very familiar with Jesus. And like I said, we didn't have much money, but tithing was always a big thing in our household. And I got to see some really cool testimonies and some really cool financial miracles growing up. And there were times where my mom didn't have the money in her account to write the tithe check out, but she just did it out of faith anyway. And I remember one specific time when she was just crying because she knew she didn't have the money. but she did it anyway, and she put it in the bag, and she was just hoping that maybe something would happen before the check cleared, you know. And sure enough, right after church that day, someone tapped her on the shoulder and said there was an envelope for her in the back of the church, and she went and looked, and it was had money in it, just the right amount of money we needed, you know, to get us through. So, yeah.
So crazy.
Yeah, I feel very blessed. I got to witness things like that a lot growing up, and, you know, typical Christian kid. I was saved at Bible camp, and I grew up, you know, knowing the Holy Spirit and everything, and yeah, so that's kind of how I grew up.
But your teenage years were pretty crazy.
Yeah, yeah. So like I said, I did everything I could. Once I was old enough to, you know, to make my own decisions, and my mom wasn't making all my decisions for me, I did everything I could to try to break away from the church and conform to the world. And I think part of it too was growing up the way I grew up, because when you are a boy and you're trying to learn how to be a man and you don't have a man in the household, you just automatically struggle with your masculinity. You know, like what is it that makes me a man?
Right.
So you're just you're trying to, you know, take advice, and you're just trying to observe any man around you that you can, you know. And for me, a big thing was music and TV shows.
Okay.
And I wasn't attracted to, you know, the most healthy music or the most healthy TV shows. So to me, I grew up just thinking masculinity was, you know, a guy who has a lot of women or gets in a lot of trouble or, you know, stuff like that. So, yeah, so my teenage years, I got in a lot of trouble. I got in trouble with the law, and got kicked out of my sports that I was involved in, which was huge for me because that was, you know, like my biggest passion growing up was sports.
Part of your identity, really.
Yeah.
Kind of made you that masculine, that man.
Definitely,
A
yeah.
man playing basketball. Or
Yeah. Right, and stability too,
Yeah.
because that was like the one thing I knew I had growing up was I always had basketball season and football season and everything, and then that got taken away from me. And so then I just leaned even deeper into some of that unhealthy lifestyle choices and stuff like that. And yeah, just got in a lot of trouble as a kid. And once I graduated, then I leaned even more into, you know, the bar scene and stuff like that. And I had a fake ID, and I was going to bars, and I was drinking. And I wasn't ever a drug addict, but I experimented with a lot of different drugs, and, you know, pretty much any of the ones you can think of, you know, even meth and cocaine and you know, just anything you can think of. I was never addicted or anything, but I tried just about all of them. And yeah.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. It's just so hard, you know. It's why I think I always say how important it is to share your story, because some, you know, people see us the way that we are today, but they don't understand what we've gone through and the things that we've had to push through to actually get to where we are today.
Yeah.
And sometimes our testimony isn't, well, sometimes for some of us, it's not always beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, it's not always, you know, grew up in a great home and things worked out great. A lot of times it's the dirty and the nasty, but it's really important to just share those things because it brings freedom to others, you know. So I'm just so appreciative that you guys are willing to share a snippet. And Sierra, in the next little bit, we're going to do an extensive with you on your story and on your testimony, because it's one of the most amazing stories I've ever heard in my life. And so I'm excited for that one.
Yes, me too.
So today we'll just have you just share just a snippet so that they can understand, you know, your relationship. So
yeah. Well, my growing up was not anything like Jake's. I didn't know God. I didn't grow up in a Christian household. I didn't even know there was a God. I grew up on a reservation in Maple Plain, Cumberland area, and so I was just a little native res kid running around. But I grew up with, it sounds like a perfect family at first. You know, I had my mom, my dad, and we had a nice house on the lake. You know, she had a good job, and my dad was a stay-at-home dad. But it ended really quick when my mom, she had back surgery, and she ended up getting really addicted to the painkillers. And it had turned into a whole spiral of drugs and stuff. So she had ended up getting really addicted to drugs, and she ended up cheating on my dad. And she had met a guy on the internet somehow and dating websites or something. And so she had packed up everything in her house, and we had lived in like a long driveway that went down. And she had packed up all of her stuff, and she only left the bed, and we left a note on the bed saying we left. And since it was on a reservation, she had the tribal police sitting at the top of the driveway. So when my dad was to come home, he couldn't go down there and like catch us leaving, so we could just leave. And she had packed us all up, me and my twin brothers. I have two brothers that are twins. And she had packed us all up, and she shipped us to Minnesota to go live with a guy that we had never met before, and not a good part of Minnesota either. I was just telling him that our very first night there, and we didn't have like a nice car at all, because by this point we had lost everything. She had lost my dad's vehicle, her vehicle. She was taking out multiple loans on vehicles and cars and, our house and stuff like that. And so they were like in debt. He was at home one day and his truck got repoed just because she was like, it was bad. Oh. So we just had this little beater car, and those like little $60 CD players you can put in a car. Well, we had one of those in the car. And our very first night there, the two windows were busted out and somebody had stole that CD player. So, wow. I mean, that shows where we were living. Yeah. And while we were living there, I got into a lot of trouble. I think I was just rebelling, trying to figure out who I was, because I didn't know who I was, what I was supposed to do. My mom had pulled our family apart, and we were just living somewhere. I didn't know anybody there. So I had actually got involved with a gang that was across the street, and it was really, really bad. And I was involved in not like involved in shootings or anything like that, but in a car when we were getting shot at one time, and like around a lot of drugs. And it was just normal for me to see a bunch of drugs on the table and a bunch of money and wow. weapons everywhere and stuff like that, and so I grew up very different, not knowing God or having any kind of thing to hold me grounded and keep me grounded. And my dad, he was just trying to live his life and trying to fight for us back. But unfortunately, sometimes, it doesn't go that way with mom. This government looks at it like, oh, mom's going to get, the right. full custody. And so I was doing everything I could to try to, get out of there. And so I had actually ran away at one point, and I was missing for a few days. How
old were you when you?
I would have been about 12, 13 years old. Yep, we lived in a 2-story house, and I had jumped out of the window to these gang members, wow. and they had caught me, thankfully. Otherwise, I probably would have broken a bunch of limbs.
No kidding.
And so I was gone for a few days, and I decided to go back to school. I walked to school, and the cops met me there. They were waiting for me, and so then at that point, I had moved back with my dad, and it was so weird because when I lived with my mom, my brothers would live with my dad, and then so when I moved back with my mom, my brothers lived with my mom, so we would swap kind of. So I never really grew up with my brothers. They were my brothers, obviously, and we were full siblings, but we never grew up together. We always swapped. It was the weirdest thing. So then I kind of did the same thing with my dad, because my dad was a little bit more strict. And he was always hardworking, trying to figure it out too, in debt, couldn't get anything, had to file bankruptcy and all of that. And so we were just living, and again, I was just continuing to be naughty and do anything I could to get attention. And I was very insecure, and just things I experienced on the reservation and things that happened to me as a child. I carried a lot of trauma, a lot of baggage with me, and I've seen a lot of things that kids shouldn't have to see and have to do.
Yeah.
So it was very different.
Yeah, that is really different. It's just so amazing to me how, you can come out of that and be who you are today.
Yeah.
It's just really amazing to me. So how did you guys meet?
You want to start the love story?
Sure, yeah.
The love boat.
Yeah. Yeah, so we took her situation and my situation, and then we came together.
Yeah. We're like, let's get together.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we met through our job. We were both managers at a phone store, and I managed a store here in town. She managed a store in a different town. And we would have these monthly manager meetings. So our district manager would bring all the store managers in and, tell us what our goals were for the month and everything. And I started seeing her at those. And when I first saw her, I was obviously very attracted to her. She's beautiful. Look at her. And I was very intimidated by her because she was like the best store manager. Like her store was always blowing all the numbers out of the water. And I was just like, I was just like this guy, this 20-something-year-old guy living in a bachelor pad and had wrinkly clothes on, and she came in looking all put together, driving a Cadillac, and successful at her job.
Yeah.
So that's where I first saw her. I was attracted to her immediately, and the district manager wanted all of us managers to exchange numbers so that we could, reach out to each other if we needed help or anything.
Convenient.
I know.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that's how I got her digits. I wish I had some cooler story, like I went up and had some cool line I said to her, but but the district manager did all the work for me. So that's how I got her number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we, and let me mention, it was not a nice Cadillac. It was a beater Cadillac. And yeah, so when I had met Jake, I was in a relationship when I had met Jake, and I had actually had Aubrey at that point, our oldest, who was 11 now. And I was with him for quite a few years, about 6-7 years. And it was kind of one of those things where a relationship out of high school, it was comfortable. It got me out of the situation I was in with my mom at that time. So we had gotten pregnant with Aubrey, and so I had Aubrey when I met him, and I was working in Spooner as the store manager there. And like he said, we had those manager meetings and we exchanged numbers, and I added him on Snapchat because I thought the same, that he was very attracted to him.
But his numbers were in the tank, right?
Yeah,
You're like,
I know. I'm like,
this guy.
like, I don't know. He doesn't sell very many phones. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
So I actually added him on Snapchat. I don't know if Snapchat is a thing anymore nowadays, but it was back then. It was pretty big. So we had started talking through Snapchat, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
From there, that's our love story. Snapchat and Verizon.
So then how did you guys start the dating, like your dating life? How did that
I think
come
we
into
just,
play?
we would just started talking, and we just would start hanging out here and there. And it just kind of evolved after that. We were hanging out like, I don't know, we just started little, and then it just started going. We just hit it off, and then it ended my other relationship pretty badly because obviously I had not ended that probably the way I should have. I knew I wasn't happy, and I knew I wasn't in love, and it wasn't this thing, but I should have been a little bit better about it. But so I ended up cheating in that relationship. So on top of our amazing backgrounds that we had, we started our relationship off with me cheating on my previous boyfriend with him, and and then we thought it was a great idea after that to move in together.
Yeah, so we just dove right in.
We just did it.
Yeah, she came over one day with all her suitcases, and I was living with some buddies at the time, and then I was like, well, I guess we got to go get a place. So we went and we got a place together, and I fell in love with Aubrey right away with her daughter, She was 1 at the time, and I just fell in love with her right away, and I loved her and I loved Aubrey, and I knew I wanted to be in a committed relationship with them. I didn't really know what that looked like or really how to do it. So we just started, I guess, kind of playing house, We went out and we got a place together, and we were like, we're going to try to, make this work and build something. Yeah.
Yeah. So what did that building look like? You guys coming from the backgrounds that you guys came from, and the life that you were living at the time, because you were living with buddies, you were not in a very good place.
No.
You were not in a very good place.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So then now you leave your guy and you move in with him, and now you guys are trying to build a relationship on a foundation that isn't very good.
Yeah.
So explain a little bit about that.
Well, at first it was awesome
It was
because
great,
it was
yeah.
exciting,
Oh,
you know.
okay. How many weeks did that last?
Yeah,
not long.
yeah, not very long. Yeah, we thought it was going to last forever, but it
Yeah.
did not last long at all. But at first it was so exciting, you know. We are in this new relationship, and we're just completely, you know, running on lust and
Yeah.
physical attraction. And you know, we're not living the way we should. We're living like a married couple, but we're not married, you
Yeah.
know, and we're not living by God's design, which never ends good, we found out.
Yeah.
So at first it was awesome, and we were
Yeah.
both very happy. But like you said, that wore off. That little honeymoon phase kind of wore off, and then it just, I don't know, we just got kind of numb in it.
Yeah.
And I think we liked getting a reaction out of each other, because when we got a reaction, like if I could make Sierra jealous, you know, or something, then I knew she still had strong feelings for me. So we would kind of just trigger each other and try to get a rise and pull emotions out of each other
Yeah.
in unhealthy ways, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I think too, you know, we tried to do that because, like he said, the lust, it was great at first, and it, you know, probably lasted a few months, and we were head over heels for each other and so in love like we thought, you know, but as soon as we're like, oh, we're kind of sick of each other, you know, like go somewhere, you know, but at the same time, like I didn't want him to go anywhere because I was such an insecure person that if he went somewhere, I'm like, where are you going? Like, are you cheating? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? You know? So like he said, we kind of would start to do these little things where we'd be like, okay, like I know he still likes me because he's, you know, I'm getting a reaction out of him. So once the lust wore off and the honeymoon phase, like he said, wore off, we kind of turned to a verbal abusive relationship where, you know, we would attack one another. We knew each other so well that we knew how to really get under each other's skin. You know, I would attack him about his dad, like, you're just like your dad, you know, you're just POS, and you know, I would really tear him down, and just to again try to get that reaction, because we were so, like he said, we were living together, but we weren't doing it by God's design. So it wasn't normal the way we were living. You know, we had Aubrey at the time. We were living both out of dysfunction, and plus we were drinking heavily on top of it, you know, like all the time. In order for us to be together, sometimes we had to have a drink, you know, even if it was just one drink. We're like, we need to have drinks together just to like be around each other, kind of.
That was kind of like that thing that kept you together, was that drinking together. And,
Yeah, it like, I don't know, it was weird. But it never turned good when we would drink, you know, it would just turn into these fights and arguments, and we would verbally attack each other like really, really bad. And it was to the point where we would be walking through Walmart, and he had got so trained because I was so insecure. I like you were saying in the beginning, you don't really know a person, you know, and back then I looked very well put together, like he had said, driving a Cadillac and dressed nice, but at the same time I was so hurt and insecure in the inside that I had dyed my hair blonde at one point. I was searching everywhere to figure out who I was, because I had no idea who I was. You know, I was missing that hole that only Jesus could fill inside of me. And so I was searching in all the wrong places with material things, and dyeing my hair and trying all the different trends of makeup, and trying to look like what social media said I had to look like, you know, being skinny, gaining weight, all the things. I did it all. And it had gotten so bad where we would walk through Walmart, and he would literally walk with his head down, because he knew that if there was an attractive person in there, which, I mean, there's attractive people in the world, you know, like there just is.
I'm not sure about Walmart.
Yeah, not Walmart, baby, but I would find somebody. You know, I'm like, oh, I mean, she wasn't the best, but still, you know. But we'd get to the car, and he just knew, you know, if there was an attractive person in there, that I would just yell and just go off, like, you were looking at her, like, I'm sorry I don't look like her, like, why don't you go be with her, you'd be much happier with her. And like it would just turn into this whole big fight of just because we had to go get groceries at Walmart, you know. And I don't know, it just got really bad. And I remember another time too, we had gone out drinking, and he was passed out, so I decided to steal his phone. I stole his phone, which was a great idea. I stole his phone. I'm like, I got a few hours. He's gonna be passed out for a couple hours. I'm good. So, and this was before we had moved in together. He should have known right there and ran that I was pretty insecure, but he was sleeping, so I took his phone and I went to to Spooner, because I lived in Spooner and he was in Rice Lake, and I went through his phone like back to like 2004 messages, which we weren't even dating. He was like in high school. I should not have even read messages from them, but I just had to know like who he was with, what he did, what he was saying to people, to like feel some kind of security inside of me. And just like I've never looked in a phone so deep in my entire life. Like I looked through his phone and it was just normal. That was normal. He'd get up to pee and I'd quick like, oh, what's in there, you know? And
yeah, and I suppose that insecurity also, it's the trust factor. Like you didn't, because of your guys' foundation of you couldn't trust anybody. The very people in your life that were supposed to be there for you, that as kids, that you don't even say the word trust because it's not really in your vocabulary.
Right.
But that foundation where I don't have to worry about where my next meal comes from. I don't have to worry about, because there's that established that's there, or my dad's going to come and get me and he doesn't come and get me, or those kind of things. So then trust is out the window. So people fail you.
Right.
So why would he not fail you?
Right, why would he be
or
any
why would she
different?
not fail
Yeah.
you?
Yeah.
So that's also in your head. And why wouldn't you search his phone?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I think she had been trained, that eventually people are just going to leave.
Yeah.
So I think she tried to take matters into her own hands. And the only way that I'm going to keep him faithful, or the way I'm going to keep him around, is if I keep him kind of under my thumb, So she was, I felt very suffocated during that, And it kind of made me resent her. But then at the same time, because I felt so suffocated, anytime I got a little sliver of freedom, I would, show her that she couldn't trust me.
Yeah.
And she would catch me, watching porn on my phone, or messaging a girl, or, like I had this, the freedom was so rare that when I would get it, I would just take it and run with it. And I felt like I had to, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just not healthy at all. So we were just in this perfect storm of, we're resenting each other, but we don't want to live without the other one. And we're just trying to figure this out. So all of that evolved into just this abusive relationship. And you mix into it, we're drinking heavily. And we feel like our 20s got robbed from us because we have Aubrey and we're taking care of Aubrey. So we're trying to, kind of straddle being parents and having a family, but also being young, wild, and free kids, and going out to the bars and getting blackout drunk all the time. And it was just a really like the perfect storm,
Yeah.
And your relationship got physical too.
Yeah.
Did it not get physical at some times? And
Yep. Yeah. So after a while, like I said, I think we only felt that love when we would get a rise out of each other. So, but eventually we had said everything, like she said, we knew each other so well. We had said everything you could possibly say to one another.
Yeah.
Like the worst things I've ever said to any human being was to her, to my wife, And I would hold her past against her. I would hold her mom against her, and I would call her swear words. I'd call her every single name in the book, I knew how to cut her deep with my words, and she knew with me too. But after a while, that didn't do the trick anymore, because we had gotten in so many of those, verbal matches, that it just didn't have the same effect or the same impact as it used to. So then it kind of evolved to the next step, and when we would get in those moments, then we would start physically abusing each other.
Yeah.
And it would get really, really bad. It started out with maybe just a shove here and there, but just like, the verbal stuff, it would evolve.
Yeah.
And then the next time it's a little bit more, and then it's a little bit more. And then before we know it, pretty much, most nights we're hanging out, we're getting really, really drunk, sometimes experimenting with some kind of drug, and then going out to the bar where there's just all kinds of, just toxic and unhealthy situations.
Especially two insecure people.
Yeah, right. So if a guy looks at her or talks to her, or a girl with me or whatever, it just ignites the fuse.
Yeah.
And then we would get into these just huge, scary sometimes physical altercations with each other. And there's a few that stick out to us when we talk about this because they were just like abnormally bad.
Yeah.
And the one that I always think of is one time I won tickets for us to go to the Twin Cities to go to an Usher concert. And I won front row tickets for us.
Wow.
Yeah.
Front row. I know.
Cool.
So we went and we were going to make a night out of it, and we got to the cities early and we hit up all the bars around the arena and we're taking shots of tequila and just getting out of our mind.
Before the
Before the
concert.
concert.
Before the concert.
Yeah.
Started.
So
Great idea.
Then the concert starts and we go to our seats in the front row, and what should be this fun, exciting time was just not. And we were I don't remember you could never remember what started the fights, but sometimes it was just nothing. It was just the dumbest things.
Yeah. A memory even,
Yeah.
just something that happened in the past could trigger it.
Yeah.
And this switch would just flip in us. And we were just fighting at this concert, and I remember sitting down on my front row seat just pouting and just, it was all drama, So we're like, we're going to leave the concert. We're not having fun. So completely intoxicated, we decided we were going to drive from the concert in the cities about 2.5, 3 hours home. And the whole time we're just giving it to each other, and we're yelling at each other, and we're calling each other names. And while I was driving, and while I'm driving, we're hitting each other. And I remember at one point we were hitting each other so bad I couldn't drive, so I pulled over into some random person's driveway. And I opened the door and I'm trying to push her out of the vehicle, and I'm just going to leave her there. And her shoe went flying out, and eventually we came to our senses and she got back in the car and I left. But it's not funny, but we still laugh about it. Some random person woke up the next day and had some random shoe in their driveway.
Yeah, it was a black heel.
Yeah,
in the
some
driveway.
heel in their driveway.
Wow.
But, we made it home and we're just hitting each other in the face and clawing and scratching at each other the whole time. And we get home and we go to bed. And the mornings after those fights, we always regretted it immediately.
Yeah.
Like once the effects of the alcohol and everything had worn off, we would wake up and we'd be like, oh, crap, it happened again.
Yeah.
And we would immediately regret it,
Yeah.
And we were immediately remorseful because we didn't like when we got like that. So we woke up and both of our faces were just all scratched up and bleeding, and we were like, we had developed a little routine when we would get into this, and we'd wake up the next day after our fights and we would kind of kiss and make up. We wouldn't really address anything, we wouldn't really forgive each other, but we would just, oh, that was dumb, we shouldn't have done that. And then we'd go grab breakfast somewhere. So we went in the car to grab breakfast, and the whole ceiling of the car was splattered in blood.
Wow.
And
Yeah, it was bad.
it was both of ours for sure,
Yeah.
because we were both so beat up that we couldn't tell really even whose it was.
Yeah.
So that's the fight that always sticks out in my mind.
Yeah.
I know there's one in yours too.
Yeah, like he said, we never really knew like what started it or whose blood it was or anything, but another really big fight that stands out to us when we talk about it and remember back, because they were just so big, and where we hit another point, where one of us should have died or been in jail or something. But the other really big time was we were drinking at home, and we were like, I don't even know where we got it, but we got cocaine that night, and we're like, well, let's try cocaine too tonight, and so we did some cocaine also, and then we're like, no, let's go to the bars because that's fun.
So brilliant.
Yeah.
You guys are
Yeah.
so smart.
we were geniuses, yeah. So we did that, and of course we get to the bar, not even a couple hours in, something had triggered us, and we drove home. Thankfully, it wasn't a 2-hour drive like before. It was right down the block. We happened to live right down the block from the bars, of course. So we drove home, and we were going at it again. And for some reason, for me, when we would get in these fights, I would take all of his clothes and I would throw them outside in the yard, and I would break things, and I would take pictures off the walls and I would slam them on the ground. And one time I threw it on the glass. I think it was like a signed thing he won at a banquet or something, but I threw it on the ground, and I have a huge scar on my foot because of the glass had come up and shattered into my foot. And we'd wake up the next morning and our house would be completely trashed because of me pretty much, because I would just go around breaking everything and slamming things around. And it was normal to have just broken things in our house or holes in the wall or, you know, anything like that. But this one night we had gone out, like I said, we did the cocaine, we were drinking, partying. We came home and it was bad, where I had actually called his parents because I think I got scared. You know, it got to a point where it scared me because we were both like kicking each other and punching each other and like throwing things. I think at one point I pulled a knife out, like, and it got scary. Like, it turned scary. So I called his parents, and at this point it was like 2:30 in the morning. Both of our faces were swollen, like black and blue, like he said, blood everywhere, glass everywhere. Like, you would think there was like a huge house party and we got robbed because of like how much damage was in the house and how much blood was everywhere. And his parents showed up, and I don't even know what they thought, you know, poor Robin and Doc, but they showed up and they had ended up calling Pastor Jake at the time. And Pastor Jake he drove over and he came and picked up Jake. And then I had called my friend, and she came and picked me up and actually took me to the hospital. And once Pastor Jake knew that I was out of the house and it was okay to bring Jake back, he brought him back. But I think for me, that in that moment, that was like an awakening for me, kind of, because I was like, oh my gosh, like that turned really scary last night, you know, where like I had to physically leave the house and go to the hospital, and he had left the house, and we, like, bones were broken, you know, and where I don't know how we never had the cops called on us. Like, yeah, it was crazy because we were loud and we lived right in town, you know, like screaming, yelling, stuff being thrown. And so that was one of like my memories for like one of our biggest fights that we got in was that night.
You know, it's so interesting because, you know, talking about your relationship together, and the reality is that it wasn't either of you, it was what was in you.
Yeah.
You know, it was all of the anger, it was all of the disappointment, it was all of the rejection, it was all of that insecurity, it was all of those things coming out because of how you were feeling, which was not really truth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it what's in us, which is why it's so important that it's like you guys coming together in the situations that you were in and from your past and all that, you come together, both insecure, neither one of you are really in a right place. It's a no wonder the relationship did what it did. No wonder you guys attacked each other the way that you did.
Yeah.
Because inside that's not what you wanted to do, but you didn't know what else to do.
Right.
You wanted to be fixed, but you didn't know how to be fixed.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was it that actually got you guys to a place where you're like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Like this isn't good for me. This isn't good for you and good for you, not good for your family.
Yeah.
So what was that thing that pushed you over that said, we're not going to do this anymore?
I think it was the fight that Sierra just described, because that one was particularly bad, where one of us could have died that night.
Yeah.
There was, we were pulling weapons out, and one of us could have easily died or gone to jail for a long time that night. And so the next day we were like, something needs to change. And we didn't really know how, but we knew that we wanted to change it.
Yeah.
And at this point, I think we had a kid on the way. Well, we never drank when we were pregnant or anything, so maybe not.
Yeah, I don't think I was pregnant with Layla quite at this point.
Yeah, no, maybe not yet. But yeah, after that particular fight, we were like, we have to change something. So we were like, well, maybe we'll stop drinking, because this seems to happen every time we drink. So we would take a couple weeks off of drinking. And I remember we would celebrate, it's been 3 weeks since we've had a
So
drink.
let's drink.
I know,
literally.
Let's get some wine and celebrate.
That really is how our brain
yeah,
works. We'd be
isn't
like,
that
it's been 3 weeks, and
Let's try
I think we're over it now. I don't think it'll happen again.
Yeah.
So then we would go out to the bars and we'd get drunk, and then it would happen again.
Yeah.
So we're like, we got to go a little longer this time. So we would go a couple months. Sometimes we would go a few months without drinking, and but it would always happen again.
Yeah.
So we were like, well, we need some counseling, but we weren't ready to, surrender to God or anything at this point. I just feel like, I think in hindsight, I don't think we thought we were good enough to do that.
Yeah.
We didn't see ourselves as like church people, with everything that we were involved in and
Right,
everything
your
we
life,
were doing.
I mean, how in the world can we
Yeah,
ever,
how can we show up to church,
Yeah.
you know, when this
Right.
is the kind of stuff that we're doing?
And me not knowing God too, I think, you know, I was like, why would I turn to God for anything? I don't even know who God is or
Right,
what
right.
what
Yeah.
that means even. So
Exactly.
that wasn't even, I think, a thought in my mind at that point.
Yeah. So we were like, well, maybe we'll try some counseling. So we just tried some secular counseling. And we did a few sessions of that. But it was just it wasn't really tailored or personalized to us. It just seemed kind of like a cookie cutter.
Yeah.
We would come and they'd give us a pamphlet on how to be a better listener.
Yeah.
Like,
And,
oh,
you know,
thanks.
stuff like that. So, which is all helpful,
It is.
you know,
It
great
is,
stuff,
yeah,
but we just
sure.
needed something a little deeper for
Yeah.
us at that time. So nothing we seemed to try would work. So then as our lives are unraveling and we're just kind of slowly hitting rock bottom in every area of our lives, our finances hit rock bottom.
And this is when we were pregnant
Yeah.
with Layla at this point.
And at this point we were pregnant, and
Again, still not married at this point.
Yeah.
We had Aubrey, and then we had another kid on the way.
yeah, so now we're having our kid. And we're so broke we can't afford any of our bills. And we had really strict landlords at the time
Yeah.
that, you know, they wouldn't let us pay late or anything, and rent was due. And we had we did not have the money. And we weren't making hardly any money at the time, and the money we did make, we were not smart with. We were still just spending it on alcohol and whatever. So I had to reach out to my mom for help. And I think this, for me personally, was a rock bottom moment, because here I am, I'm about to be a dad, and I'm going to be the leader of my household. I'm going to be the provider for this family, and I'm calling my mommy, you know, and asking her for help paying my bills. So this was a big, you know, wake up call for me. So I called my mom, and I told her the situation we were in financially, and I said, there's no possible way. I don't have any limit left on these credit cards or anything, and I need help financially, or I'm not going to be able to pay rent. And so I said, I'll pay you back as soon as I can, but I need it by this date because rent is due. And so she said, look, I'll give you the money, and you don't even have to pay me back, but the one thing that I want you and Sierra to do is I want you guys to come to church with me. So, yeah.
That's a good mom right there.
Right, yeah, I'm very grateful for that.
And
so,
you were desperate.
Yeah.
We're like, okay.
So as I'm on the phone with her, she's reminding me of all the things I saw when I was young, you know, and the times she wrote out the checks crying, and, you know, and the envelopes of money sitting for her, and how God always provided for her. And there's no way she should have been able to pay her bills, you know, being a single mom with 3 kids, but God always provided, and she always, you know, gave the credit to God and to her decision to tithe.
Yeah.
And just surrender her finances to him. So she said, I'm going to give you the money. You don't have to pay me back, but I want you guys to come to church with me this Sunday, and I want you to tithe something, whatever it is. Even if it's not a lot, I just want you to put something in the offering. So I went to Sierra, and I said, look, I think I can get money for our rent.
You don't know anything about God,
Yeah.
right?
All right.
Okay.
I said, but there is a catch.
Yeah.
I said, she wants us to come to church with her, and she wants us to put something in the offering. So I don't think either of us really want to do this at this point in time, but I don't see really any other option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we decided to do it. So we went to church with my mom, and you happened to be preaching that Sunday. And you had no idea we would be there. You know, there was no possible way you could have known, because we just showed up.
Yeah.
And I hadn't been there since I was a kid. And you guys just so happened to be in the middle of a series on relationships.
Yeah.
And
Pretty
so
crazy. I know.
yeah.
I know.
So you were preaching that day, and it seemed like everything that you were saying, you were speaking directly to us, almost
Yeah.
like you tailored your whole message to us. But again, you had no idea we were going to be there. But everything that you said was hitting us and landing right in our spirits, and it was stuff that we needed to hear.
Yeah.
And so we left church that day. And then on top of it, my stepdad said he would buy he would take us out us and our family out for lunch.
Yeah, man.
So we're like, man, we got our rent paid. We're getting free breakfast or whatever.
We have to go.
So that was really our motivation for going to church.
Yeah.
It wasn't to reconnect with God or anything.
Yeah.
But even so, he still met us there.
Yeah.
And when we left church that day, we felt good.
Yeah.
We felt like a healthy family.
Yeah.
You know, and we had not felt that way, I don't think, ever.
Yeah.
But there was something we liked about it. We liked, you know, waking up and, you know, getting our church clothes on and going, and then everything you were saying was just so nutritious to our spirits.
Yeah.
And we left just feeling different. We hadn't
was
felt this way.
different. Yeah, and me, like I said, you know, not knowing God or ever hearing of a God or anything, you know, and just going to church, you know, and me thinking I'm just going because we're going to get our rent paid. And then here you are preaching about relationships. I'm like, did they know we were coming, you know, and like, who is Pastor Shar? Why does she know our whole life right now, you know? And this, gosh, was what, 8 years ago, 7, 8 years ago now that was. And I remember one specific thing that you had said, and it hit me hard. You said, love is a choice, not a feeling. And I was like, I had like an epiphany, or I don't even know if that's the right word, but where like something sparked in my brain, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I have been living this whole time off of feeling. I've been wanting to get all these feelings from Jake and make him feel away and me to feel away. And so I've been searching in all these different places, you know, with the drugs, the alcohol, the men, the everything, you know, I was searching for that feeling. And from him, you know, like I wanted him to love me so much. And when you said that love is a choice, not a feeling, it just hit different. And I was like, we can choose to love one another, you know, like we don't, even if we don't feel it, like we can choose it. And you know, not having any church background, like he said, it hit me different, you know, and I was just like, whoa, what is this that I'm feeling inside? Like I was feeling the butterflies, my heart was pounding, my hands were sweaty. I almost wanted to leave because I'm like, this is like uncomfortable, you know, like what is happening right now, you know, but at the same time, it was so good. And like, I wanted more of it, you know, like he said, we left there and like, I felt just recharged, and I wanted more of that feeling, you know, that I had got there. And it was so crazy because it wasn't anything, it wasn't the bars, it wasn't anything like that. It was like a healthy feeding.
Yeah. It's like the things that you were doing before was empty. It's like a bucket with holes.
Yeah.
You try to fill it, but then it just would seep out, and it wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't actually filling the places that you were looking for and desiring to be filled.
Right.
You know, I always say there's a hole inside of all of us, and it's in the shape of God. It's like it's a God hole. It's like we try to fill it with alcohol, drugs, you know, sex, all of these things. We try to fill it, and it might fill it for a minute, but then it doesn't fulfill.
Right.
Because God created and designed us for himself, you know, and said that God chose too. He chose us.
Yeah.
And he gave his son for us. And so that started your journey, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah.
It's like you come to church, I'll pay your rent, and you come to church, I'll buy you dinner.
Yeah.
So it's like win-win.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But that is, you know, I always, you know, God is sneaky sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he gets us where we need it, you know, fulfills a physical thing to really fulfill something spiritually. And so you guys come into a building that, Jake, you were familiar with, because I remember your mom coming when you were a baby.
Yeah.
You know, you were just a little teeny
Yep.
guy. And so for you guys to walk in just because you are wanting the money, because you want the breakfast or whatever it was, you know, God met you.
Yeah.
And that started your journey of really feeling that one thing that's like, I like this.
Yeah.
Like it was like this glimmer of hope that you didn't have before.
Right.
Yep.
You know, that feeling wasn't really, it might have been a feeling, but really what it was a supernatural hope.
Yeah.
That there is hope.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and that really started that whole journey of you guys working through some things, and
Yeah.
and then what happened after that.
Yeah, so after that, we had, you know, fulfilled our obligations to my mom, but we felt so good, we wanted to keep coming back.
Yeah.
So we just kept on coming back, and every time we came, it was just like that first time, you know, everything we were hearing was stuff we needed to hear.
Yeah.
And it made us better people, and it made us feel better inside. And we could feel this transformation happening within ourselves and within our relationship. So we just kept on coming, and we kept on doing what my mom said and tithing, and eventually we got plugged into the small groups, and you know, we were going to small groups, and we just wanted to get to know God more because we could see the effect that he was having on our lives. Well, after we had been in this system for about 3 or 4 months, I saw this job posting for a job because we're still struggling financially,
Yeah.
you know. I saw this job posting, and the salary they were offering was like triple what I was making at the time. And I was definitely not qualified for the job because it was driving full time for a company. And I had DUIs on my records, and I had had my license suspended from too many tickets. And I had actually just gotten a job at a car dealership right before this, but they had to let me go because when I got further into the hiring process, they found out their insurance wouldn't cover me to move the cars around on the lot even. So how am I going to get hired, you know, to drive full time for this company making all this money?
Yeah.
So I was like, whatever, I'm just going to try it anyway. It doesn't hurt. So I just sent in my application, and I found out dozens of people had applied for this position, but I kept making it through somehow to the next round and the next interview process. And eventually they ended up offering me the job. And I knew, I was like, if I can get this job, it's going to fix all of our financial problems.
Yeah.
But I also know I'm not qualified and I don't deserve this job. So if it happens, it's from God. You know, there's no way around it. It's God giving me this job if I get it. And I remember when they offered me the job, the boss, he said, "You're not qualified for this job." He goes, "But we feel like you're a diamond in the rough, so we're going to take a shot with you." And I just knew right there that, you know, God had orchestrated this whole thing, and that this was him, you know, blessing us and, just honoring us for the effort that we had made, you know, in our relationship to come back to him. And so within a year of us, of that time we came to church when you were preaching, you know, and me borrowing money from my mom, I had secured this job, and then we were able to buy a house for our family. And, you know, God just, we saw that when we made him the foundation of our finances, he fixed everything. And at this point we saw, as we were still learning to make him the foundation of our relationship and of our household, he was fixing our household and fixing our relationships and fixing us. So we were like, we just want to go all in, you know, and we want to do things the right way. So at that point we decided we wanted to get married. And part of getting married here, and I'm so happy you guys do this, is you have to go through pre-marriage counseling with the pastors. So we did that. We did it with you and with Pastor Bob, and that was really where we showed up to these pre-marriage counseling sessions with just this tangled mess of a relationship. And in those meetings, really, through your guys' wisdom and through your guidance and through you, because you guys used the word, you know, and you taught us what godly love, what biblical love is, what real biblical forgiveness is. And you guys walked us through all this. And the pre-marriage counseling here at this church is 3 sessions. But we
had probably 30.
I think we had 3 sessions of just us forgiving each other, because one thing Pastor Bob had us do, and I thought this was very helpful for us, was because up until this point we would get in these fights and everything, but then we'd just sweep it under the rug and then, you know, continue on with our lives. And we had never actually, you know, forgiven each other and put these things to rest. Or we would say we forgave each other, but then the next time we got in a fight, we would bring that back up again. So we were never actually moving on from these things. And one thing that Pastor Bob had us do was he had us stand up and look at each other in the eyes. And it was so uncomfortable. And so weird.
We're like, why?
But he had us go through every incident that we could recall, every name that we had called each other, every physical fight that we had, anything we had ever done where I felt like Sierra had hurt me or she felt like I had hurt her. She had us, or Pastor Bob had us stand up and tell each other those things.
Holding hands, looking.
Holding hands, looking at each other. This is how I felt when you did this or whatever. And then we would have to say, I apologize for that. And then you would have to say, I forgive you. And
for making you feel.
Exactly. And Pastor Bob said, okay, now that you don't ever have to address that again, because you guys have forgiven each other. You guys have moved on from that, you know. And that was so huge for us, because that was something we had never done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And something that you can take into every day, because every day there's something that we can probably forgive each other
for
for.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in those sessions, he just helped you guys both. You helped us unpack all of this baggage, we did individual sessions with you guys, but we unpacked all this baggage that we had picked up through our childhoods and through our relationship so far, through our previous relationships. And we really kind of just cleaned out our closets and we put those things to rest, and we were able to start fresh.
Yeah.
And then we got married, and
Yeah, and then, like he said, so we did all of that, and oh my gosh, like he said, it was so awkward. Like he would make us say like the actual swear words, and you know how hard it is to say swear words in front of your pastor, and like to say you called each other that. We're like, are you sure we're supposed to say that? But it was so good, and it was so releasing. And for me, growing up not having that and not being able to ever release any of those emotions or feelings, it really felt like all of these weights were coming off my shoulders, and I just felt so new and so pure and so light, and then like he said, so we had gotten married, and then we decided to actually get baptized. And we got baptized on an Easter Sunday, and we decided to do it together. We felt like we needed, just something about doing it together and coming together and united, and just, so we got baptized Easter Sunday. Again, this was probably like 7 years ago now, and I just remember like we both came out of there and we are new. We are a new creation, literally the old us was gone. It died. Like it was left in that water, and it was so good because, not only did we do it for ourselves, but we did it like united, and like we're doing this for us, and to, to prove to ourselves, and, and God really just, he met us there, and he showed up, and he lifted a lot off of us, and it was good.
Yeah. It's so pretty amazing. It's amazing because now you look at, what you guys have gone through, your whole story individually, then your story coming together, and then that moment where you're like, we can't live like this. So what the world would look at, and even sometimes your parents, were like, I don't think this is going to work. I don't think that they're going to make it. This is not good, and all of those things. There was always that little teeny bit of hope. And when you guys made that decision to do something different, it's like you got to make that first step to want to change. You got to acknowledge that where you guys are at was not good. Putting things under the rug that doesn't work. So coming into that whole that place, and then even after you guys got married and after you guys made a commitment to the Lord and made a commitment to that you're all in, it's still not easy.
No.
It's not easy, but what you guys have made the determination of is it's worth it. It's worth it. It's your relationship and your marriage is worth it. Your family is worth it. And it's worth putting in the hard work. It's worth pushing through the hard times. And when we do that, it's like when we live according to the Word of God, there's promises in the Word of God that are for us. And because you guys have done that, again, it hasn't been perfect. And it hasn't been every day where it's just like, oh, honey, I love you. There's still things that you guys have to deal with. But now that you've been given the tools, the very most important tool is forgiveness. Is like you choose, just like love is a choice, or forgiveness is a choice. And it's imperative that we choose to forgive. Regardless of how we feel, we have to forgive, and you guys have done that. And because you guys have done that, pushing through all of the hard things and whatever, where are you guys today?
Today, we're really good. We're really healthy. We had a third baby after we got married, so we did it the right way. We had Jackson. And we're pregnant now with our fourth baby. But no, things are great. Things are really good. And like you said, it's definitely not perfect. And we really want to emphasize on that. We still have our struggles, but we know how to not break things and punch each other in the face and have to go to the bars because we're fighting, or we can walk through Walmart and he's not having to put his head down, because Like I, for sure, still struggle every once in a while with insecurities, because I'm not perfect, but it's not to the point where I'm dyeing my hair blonde and having to go do all of the things to try to make me feel complete. Like I know that I have Jesus and that's enough for me, and I think just knowing where we were and seeing where we were and walking through everything and seeing where we are now, we never, like for me anyways, like I know I never want to go back to that because we were so miserable. I think at one point we like hated each other. We really did. And I know that's a strong word, and now we love each other. Like we choose to love each other. And like you said, some days it is a little bit harder where we have to choose to love one another, but it's easier with Jesus as our foundation because we know we're rooted in that now and that's our foundation and we know where we could be and we know where we are and we know how worth it it is, and how much he's worth it and yeah.
This is the hardest part, I think, of the testimony to share because it seems like you're almost bragging.
Yeah.
But the Bible says that, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God.
Yeah.
And we can't share our story without and share, the lows and not share where God has taken us to, you know. So this part, it always feels weird, but you guys have heard now what life was like when we tried to do it our way.
Yeah.
So this in no way, shape, or form is because of us. It's only because of God. But like she said, we're in a great place now and we're not perfect.
Yeah.
And the perfect marriage or the perfect relationship doesn't exist.
No.
But you can have a healthy relationship and no relationship is too far gone for God to, make healthy again. And like she said, if we go through an obstacle or if we have a disagreement or even a fight or whatever, we know how to get through it in a healthy way. We have healthy boundaries in place.
And
that
I think
we
that's
won't cross.
important too, to know that when you get to this point, like you do have to set boundaries in place because we've lost friends, we've even lost family, because we decided to follow Jesus and, and I think that's important too to really, we setting boundaries.
And, we still we're doing just fine financially. I still have my great job. We own a business now in town. We both have had the opportunity now to share our testimony with a lot of people and to help other couples, and that's really a passion of ours because we just want to take people that were where we were and let them know that there's hope, that God can pull them out of this thing and just share whatever God helped us with to help get us out of our mess. And, we preach, and I'm an elder at the church, and we have, amazing kids, and like she said, not perfect, but healthy. And that's a win.
I love that. There's no perfect.
No.
Right.
And there's unhealthy and there is healthy.
Right.
And healthy is growing. Healthy is like it's daily. It's choosing. It really is choosing. It's choosing what you're going to decide to do.
Right?
We all have the free will to choose. And so very, very, very proud of you guys.
Thank you.
And
we wouldn't be where we are without you guys.
Well,
that's for sure.
It's you guys put in the hard work. You got to make that choice. I mean, you had an army around you. You had a really good tribe around you, and you really did. You had parents that loved you, Jake, that really were not going to allow you guys to continue in the dysfunction. They were not going to allow that. So that is really a huge thing too. But you guys had to make the choice. You had to make the hard decisions. You had to push through the hard stuff. You had to admit the hard things, and then you had to, do the right. It's like we want the right results now. But the results, it takes a minute. It's like it takes making the right decision over and over and over and over again until you start seeing the results. Like you said, it was months. And then you finally got an opportunity for a job. So it wasn't just automatically, it was doing the right thing over and over and over again, because you could go, well, it just doesn't work. But you knew you had that little glimpse of hope that, wait a minute, this is way better than this.
Oh, for sure.
I don't see it, like where you are today. You didn't see it back then.
I mean, that was 10 years ago.
That's just the craziest thing. But you guys are doing amazing, and we're just so proud of you guys. You're both leaders. You are continue moving forward, and God is, you guys got a great business, and probably you're going to have more businesses, and who knows I'm excited to find out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
us too.
us too.
Yeah. So thank you guys again for sharing and for being vulnerable and real. And I know that this here is going to help somebody listening, because somebody listening is hopeless, feels hopeless, whether it's in a relationship or just individually. They feel like they're in a pit and they can't get out. But I really believe that you guys opening up and being vulnerable and real and authentic is going to help somebody out there that's listening and watching to be able to make the right choice and do the right thing. So we're actually going to have Jake and Sierra's information, contact information listed below. So if anybody out there has any questions or any comments for them, that would be great for you guys to contact them. Otherwise, Women of Purpose, check us out on social media. And our website is womanofpurpose.net. I'm taking care of all the legal things. I always forget this part. And our email is contact@womanofpurpose.net. So feel free to contact us in any way. Hope you enjoyed the podcast, this episode. And again, thank you for joining.